Okay, what can you do if you think you develop HPPD? I'm going to try and do this in 15 minutes. Timer starts now. Okay, the first thing to ask yourself is how long has it been since the trip? I'm going to suggest that if it's been less than 2 weeks, then you need to stop worrying and stop looking up HPPD, because psychedelics can increase your neuroplasticity for extended periods after the acute effects of the drug have worn off, i.e. you're no longer tripping, and there can still be lingering visual effects. And please, this matters because anxiety, fixation and rabbit holing are only going to elevate your baseline levels of anxiety, which can trigger visual symptoms. Okay? Anxiety and stress are linked to visual disturbances, as well as these visual disturbances possibly occurring in the spectrum of normal visual perception, e.g. being in the dark or looking at blank surfaces for extended periods of time, i.e. you can get these without having used any hallucinogens. They are specifically linked to anxious conditions and panic states. Some researchers have suggested that HPPD is fundamentally structurally linked to anxiety and stress, and possibly even trauma, specifically with the role of bad trips in triggering this shit. So fundamentally, you need to try and reduce your anxiety levels. What's something you could do? Well, try and get 8 hours of sleep every night, because poor sleep is linked to depersonalization, derealization, a raft of other psychological and mental problems, and even visual disturbances. Yoga and muscle relaxation. It's pretty clear evidence that this kind of stuff is pretty helpful for lowering your baseline levels of arousal, lowering your baseline levels of stress and anxiety, and getting you into your body. Stop taking drugs. Yes, whilst people can continue to take psychedelics and other drugs like cannabis with HPPD without necessarily exacerbating their visual symptoms, although there's a high chance they will, it's possible that continuing to take such drugs will maintain your anxiety and arousal levels and therefore maintain your visuals. There is also a slight chance, and there are some anecdotal reports along these lines, that the resumed use of psychedelic drugs can get rid of your HPPD, and it's likely this is because of a reverse neuroplasticity effect, but at the same time exposes you to the risk of other psychological complications from psychedelics. For instance, I continue to take acid quite heavily with HPPD, and then I gave myself depersonalization. So take it from me. And this isn't just the heavy Class A, Class B, Class C, Schedule 1 to 3 shit as well. It could also apply to caffeine and nicotine. Because caffeine is a pretty useful drug for productivity and work and generally getting about in 21st century life. But if you're genuinely struggling with your visuals and you want to bring them down, you want to be less anxious, you want to be less freaked out, probably consider going off caffeine and nicotine, because they are stimulants. Find a support network. Yes. For me, it took 5 years to talk to anyone about HPPD, apart from a couple of close friends who didn't entirely understand the sheer depths and strangeness of living with HPPD, and my parents still don't entirely understand, even though I've told them now. But now that I've told a few more close friends and close relationships about what it's like to live with HPPD, it really is much easier, because if you start freaking out and worrying that you're looking weird, you don't have to worry, because people know you have HPPD and they're not going to judge you. And that can seem especially significant in a culture where drugs are so stigmatized and you might feel like a freak. You might feel like you're locked in your own dream world with this shit. But the more you fixate on these kind of thoughts, the more you're only exacerbating your sense of alienation, the more you're only giving energy and weight and momentum to this HPPD. So if you can, try to talk to other people. Exercise. Yes, exercise has shown proven benefits for a range of psychological complaints, and specifically it can promote synaptogenesis, which is a speculated, hypothesized route to decreasing the intensity of visual symptoms. But exercise can increase the visual intensity and also the intensity of depersonalization, derealization in the short term. And whilst exercise has not been researched much scientifically as an intervention for HPPD or depersonalization, derealization, I would suggest strong personal anecdotal support for this. Generally reconnect with your body. Yes, the body is increasingly emphasized in the therapeutic spiritual world nowadays, so I can understand if you have a kind of allergy to this promotion of the body as some kind of wooey, amazing spiritual vessel that will solve your problems, but I do think there is something seriously to it. Basically, the HPPD can seriously colonize your sense of sensory experience. Because your visual system is now kind of weird, it can cause you to fixate on visual information over the extraordinary array of other sensory information that's available to you at any 1 second, and it can dissociate you subtly and over time significantly from your body, and therefore creating a loop of disconnection and derealization, depersonalization. And the body is an incredible gift for reducing anxiety at any one moment, because For instance, if you're about to enter an environment that's quite triggering for you as someone who suffers from HPPD or depersonalization, derealization, the body is a great way to ground yourself and create an immediate sense of presence. Your thoughts can be miles into the future, or they can be ruminating on the past, but your body, and forgive me if this sounds wooey, is always now. It is always present. And there really is an amazing inner landscape you can explore if you pay attention. For instance, with mindfulness meditation. And mindfulness meditation can be contraindicated for HPPD. That is, it might not be helpful, because especially if you got it after a bad trip that might have traumatized you, mindfulness meditation can create a rebound effect of even more extreme dissociation. So if you think you might meet those criteria, then perhaps consider a trauma-sensitive meditation mindfulness teacher or regime. And also, mindfulness meditation can, if done improperly or unguided, or perhaps if it's just not right for you, it can cause you to fixate on your visual symptoms more than ever. So take it tentatively, take it lightly, but I think mindfulness meditation could be incredibly helpful. And also, if you are kind of missing psychedelics and the personal spiritual growth and highs that they gave you, then meditation can be a nice passport to these kind of states. Therapy. Yes, if all this personal work, doing it yourself, isn't necessarily getting you where you want to be, going to an external therapist is no defeat. It can be a sign of strength and inner resolve to ask the outside world for help, to ask a professional for help. In terms of specific therapies, this hasn't been particularly researched, but there is some limited psychotherapeutic published evidence that these kind of interventions can be helpful for HPPD. For instance, cognitive behavioral therapy, relaxation-focused therapy that focuses on normalizing and destigmatizing these visual symptoms for yourself, and in cultivating an attitude of acceptance with whatever you're experiencing at any one moment. And also, trauma-sensitive therapies can be helpful. In my EMDR, for instance, which is an eye trauma-based therapy. And you can find a list of care professionals who have previously dealt with people with HPPD on our specialist directory on our website. And if you're looking for specific insight in your psychedelic experiences, then perhaps finding a psychedelic integration therapist could be helpful. Perhaps more than anything, I would advise you not to be scared, to try to not neglect your life before. Don't feel as if your past self, pre-HPPD, pre-trip, is dead. They are not dead. You're not dying. It might be extremely difficult right now. It might feel like your life has been turned completely upside down and that you've entered a new dream world. I mean, looking into this camera right now, things are getting decidedly slightly weird, but my body's still here. My other senses are still working. I'm still able to function. I still have relationships. I still have hobbies. All those things are still around. They're still alive. I would encourage you to focus on them. Don't lose track of your external tasks. Okay? This might seem kind of gaslighty, but really, try not to let those things go. What was very helpful for me as a 17-year-old first living in the strange world of HPPD, wandering the corridors of my secondary school, was remembering that I still fucking loved music. I still loved playing guitar. It gave me something to think about that wasn't my strange new world. But if these options are failing, the psychotherapeutic, the anxiety reduction, the sleep rebalancing, the normalizing, the accepting, the therapizing just aren't helping, then you might want to consider seeking outside psychiatric help. For instance, getting medication. Medication has never been something that I've particularly felt the need to consider because my visuals haven't been that overwhelming, and I was able myself, thankfully, to regain a sense of emotional and cognitive stability through basically the things I outlined above. But again, you don't have to feel like a failure if you seek medication. And some medications that have proven helpful for a lot of people are things like lamotrigine. Other medications have shown mixed effect. SSRIs, we're not sure if they're helpful. They could help some people. We know they've made it worse for others. Antipsychotics are the same. Benzodiazepines, they will crash your anxiety way down. They'll bring down your visuals, but they have a strong risk of dependency. And benzodiazepine withdrawal syndrome can include visual disturbances. I mean, I know of some people who have developed HPPD-like effects purely through withdrawing from benzos, so you might want to watch out for those. But if your condition is sufficiently extreme and debilitating, then really there is no shame in getting this outside medication. But perhaps above all else, the folk wisdom of the HPPD community should tell you, and will tell you if you ask for that help, acceptance. Acceptance is the way. Acceptance is the route. Acceptance is the destination. Go forth and conquer, my HPPD friends. I wish you the best of luck.